The live, just give me about 60 seconds to set this up on my phone. As you know, it takes me just a second as YouTube sets up my live. But it won't take very long at all. I appreciate you tuning in. I've been talking about this a lot with the Ripple protocol consensus algorithm, that I would go through the white papers at some point, and I felt like today was a better day than any to do it. So that's what we're going to do today. I don't know how many people will join. Most people will probably see this after the live. But either way, I think it's important, and if you are a fan of XRP, Ripple, I think it's nice to have a basic understanding of what exactly is going on. So I hunted down the actual PDF, so, you know, we get what we get, and then we'll go through it together. We'll see what happens. So just give me about 30 more seconds, and we'll be ready to go. But we'll also take a look at the XRP chart, as well as, you know, we're getting into a little bit more of a critical area here. We know we need it to hold the 457 level, otherwise we break down a formation and then it gets a little dicey. But we'll go over all that in a little bit. But we're going to focus heavily on this PDF. So I appreciate anybody who's here. Make sure you hit that like button. Ron's Aviation, welcome in. John Hall, welcome in, brother. Appreciate you tuning in. I think this is going to be a compelling I think this will be a compelling live for anybody who tunes in. You know, anybody who wants to chat a little bit. Louisville, welcome in. Practically done here, so I'm going to get through the intro here, and then we're going to get going here. Okay. So I pulled up. Everything's good. I think I can see everybody's comments. Good to go. Okay, good mid-afternoon, 3:29 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Saturday, July 8th, 2023. I'm XRP Future Millionaire, and I reside in the great state of Michigan. So I've wanted to do this for a while. Even if we don't get a huge following here on the live, at least this will be in the database, and anybody who wants to learn about the Ripple protocol consensus algorithm, you'll see it a lot, RPCA, and we've talked about it. And I've talked about I was going to go through this, but I found today was the best day to do this. And then, you know, if we have any interest, we'll go through the XRP chart after, obviously. So I'd love to hear everybody's input as we go along, if anybody decides to join along. So the Ripple protocol consensus algorithm, this paper does not reflect, let me make this a little bit bigger. This paper does not reflect the current state of the ledger consensus protocol or its analysis. We will continue hosting this draft for historical interest, but it should not be used as a reference for an updated analysis and presentation of the consensus protocol. Please refer to the blah 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 release on February 20th, 2018. So this is your backstory of how we got to where we're going. So that's why I wanted to use this. So while several consensus algorithms exist for the Byzantine generals, problems specifically as it pertains to distribution payment systems, many suffer from high latency induced by the requirement that all nodes within the network communicate synchronously. In this work, we present a novel consensus algorithm that circumvents this requirement by utilizing collectively trusted subnetworks within the larger network. We show that the trust required of these subnetworks is in fact minimal and can be further reduced with principal choice of the member nodes. In addition, we show that low latency consensus algorithm, which still maintains robustness in the face of Byzantine failure. We present this algorithm in its embodiment in the Ripple protocol. So this is David Schwartz is on here, Noah Young, Arthur Brito, and then that's obviously their emails. And then it's got the table of context, but the introduction is where we're going to start. So the introduction, and I appreciate anybody tuning in, as I really feel like, you know, not everything's going to be the most popular, but nonetheless, we've got to go through this stuff. It's relevant for what we're looking at. It's relevant for why we own XRP. And I think it's actually something we should all get introduced to, honestly. So interest in research in distributed consensus systems has increased markedly in recent years, with the central focus being on distributed payment systems. Such networks allow for fast, low-cost transactions which are not controlled by a centralized source. While the economic benefits and drawbacks of such a system are worthy of much research in and of themselves, this work focuses on some of the technical challenges that all distributed payment systems must face. While these problems are varied, we group them in three main categories: correctness, agreement, and utility. By correctness, we mean that it is necessary for a distributed system to be able to discern the difference between a correct and fraudulent transaction. In traditional institutions and cryptographic signatures that guarantee a transaction is indeed coming from the institution that it claims to be coming from. In distributed systems, however, there is no such trust as the identity of any and all members, and the network may not even be known. Therefore, alternative methods for correctness must be utilized. So this is page 2 of 8. So, agreement refers to the problem of maintaining a single global truth in the face of a decentralized accounting system. While similar to the correctness problem, the difference lies in the fact that while a malicious user of the network may be unable to create a fraudulent transaction defying correctness, it may be able to create multiple correct transactions that are somehow unaware of each other and thus combine to create a fraudulent act. For example, a malicious user may make 2 simultaneous purchases with only enough funds in their account to cover each purchase individually, but not together. Thus, each transaction by itself is correct. But if executed simultaneously in such a way that the distributed network as a whole is unaware of both, a clear problem arises, commonly referred to as the double spend problem. Thus, the agreement problem can be summarized as the requirement that only one set of globally recognized transactions exists in the network. And I understand, everybody, this is not the sexiest, but if you're watching this, I commend you. If anybody's watching this, I commend you. 17 people decided to tune in. I commend each and every one of you. 13 likes, I greatly appreciate that. But this is more, so you have the information. And so no matter what anybody tells you, at least you have a basic understanding of why you are getting into certain things. Like, a lot of people are vastly unaware of what's actually going on. So utility is a slightly more abstract problem, which we define generally as the usefulness of a distributed payment system, but which in practice most often simplifies to the latency of the system. A distributed system that is both correct and in agreement, but which requires 1 year to process a transaction. For example, it is obviously an inviolable payment system. Additional aspects of utility may include the level of computing power required to participate in the correctness and agreement process, or the technical proficiency required of an end user to avoid being defrauded in the network. And the reason I do these on days like today, it's the weekend, thinly traded weekend. There's not much news. So many of these issues have been explored long before the advent of modern distributed computer systems via a problem known as the Byzantine generals problem. In this problem, a group of generals each control a portion of an army and must coordinate an attack to sending messengers to each other. Because the generals are in unfamiliar and hostile territory, messengers may fail to reach their destination, just as nodes in a distributed network may fail or send corrupted data instead of the intended message. An additional aspect of the problem is that some of the generals may be traitors, either individually or conspiring together, and so messages may arrive which are intended to create a false plan that is doomed to failure for the loyal generals, just as malicious members of a distributed system may attempt to convince the system to accept fraudulent transactions or multiple versions of the same truthful transaction that would result in a double spend. And I promise this is not as boring as it seems when we get through this. Double spend. Thus, a distributed payment system must be robust both in the face of standard failures and so-called Byzantine failures, which may be coordinated and originate from the multiple sources in the network. In this work, we analyze one particular implementation of the distributed payment system, and this is why I wanted to do this. The Ripple protocol, we focus on the algorithm utilized to achieve the above goals of correctness, agreement, and utility, and show that all are met within necessary and predetermined tolerance thresholds, which are well understood. In addition, we provide code that simulates the consensus protocol with parameterizable network size, number of malicious users, and message sending latencies. So 2, definition, formalization, and previous work. We begin by defining components of the Ripple protocol in order to prove correctness, agreement, and utility properties. We first formalize these properties into axioms. These properties, when grouped together, form the notion of consensus, the state in which nodes in the network reach corrective agreement. We then highlight some previous results relating to consensus algorithms and finally state the goals of consensus for the Ripple protocol within our formalization framework. So 2.1, Ripple protocol components. So you can start to get a basic understanding of what Ripple and its protocol is all about. But, you know, I imagine not very many people are going to join in for this. Jamal, welcome in. Everything's going good. I appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you tuning in, my friend. So the server is any entity running the Ripple server software as open to the Ripple client software, which only lets the user send and receive funds, which participants in the consensus process. The ledger. Trading with J-Ride. What's going on, my friend? Welcome in, homie. The ledger is a record of the amount of currency in each user's account and represents the ground truth of the network. The ledger is repeatedly updated with transactions that successfully pass through the consensus process. But trading with J-Ride, isn't it the truth, though, when you put out real information that people should, in fact, understand? You don't get very many people that'll watch. Hopefully, you know, we'll get 400 or 500 people that'll take the time and listen to this after it's released. But we'll see what happens. Billionaire faith. Yes, you do need to know how this stuff works. 100%. And why not go to the source? This is the source. So it's going to take time, but I'm going to read through it. And yeah, I might be a little harder for me to see because I am swelled up a little bit under my eye. But it's not, you know, that eye doesn't matter, but it's causing me to have a little bit of, you know, it's a little bit harder. Real info is not respected anymore. You're right about that, trading with J-Ride. You got that right. Because they're all about price instead of knowing the tech. X-Ray, I could not agree more. But why not understand it, man? Why not understand it? Terry, thank you so much. Saying good job. Last closed ledger. And I promised this for everybody. And I said it when the time was right. I'd find a day when it was a little slower. And I would just release it. And whoever wants to watch it can watch it. You know, I'll put the information out. And all we can do is understand it ourselves, right? So last closed ledger. The last closed ledger is the most recent ledger that has been ratified by the consensus process and thus represents the current state of the network. And it's not like we're not going to talk. But how many people have said and asked me the question about the XRP ledger and exactly what we're talking about? How many people have wanted to know what the Ripple protocol consensus algorithm is? I've had this question so many times, so why not go to the source? Why not understand the source? So the open ledger is the current operating status of a node. Each node maintains its own open ledger. Transactions initiated by end users of a given server are applied to the open ledger of that server, but transactions are not considered final until they have passed through the consensus process, at which point the open ledger becomes the last closed ledger. So this is page 3 of 8. And then we get into some cool stuff too. It's not just, we'll get into some cool stuff here. It's some of the charts, but we have to get through the basic information first. This is more of the introduction, then we're going to see the working order. So the unique node list, the UNL. Each server maintains a unique node list, which is a set of other servers that queries when determining consensus. Only the votes of the other members of the UNL of us are considered when determining consensus. I'll get better, bro, and thank you, Pennsylvania hears you. Thanks, man. X-Ray, I appreciate that. I'm getting better. The swelling of my hands down by a good 75%. Gaining the range of motion and everything back. So we're getting there. Thus, the UNL represents a subset of the network which, when taken collectively, is trusted by us to not collude in an attempt to defraud the networks. Note that this definition of trust does not require that each individual member of the UNL be trusted. See section 3.2, which we'll get there shortly. Actually, I guess we're not gonna dump into section 3.2 yet, but we'll know this from the unique node. So remember the UNL. Proposer, any server can broadcast transactions to be included in the consensus process, and every server attempts to include every valid transaction when a new consensus round starts. During the consensus process, however, only proposals from servers on the UNL of a server S are considered by S. 2.2 formalization. We use the term non-faulty to refer to nodes in the network that behave honestly and without error. Conversely, a faulty node is one which expresses errors which may be honest due to data corruption, implementation errors, etc., or malicious Byzantine errors. We reduce the notion of validating a transaction to simple binary decision problems. Each node must decide from the information it has been given on the value 0 or 1. As in ITIA, Dolev and Gill, 1984. 3, we defined consensus according to the following 3 axioms. So it's nice to actually see all of this in front of us. Like, we don't have to guess on any of this. I seen a comment, so I want to make sure I answer anything I can. True, welcome in, my friend. What's good? Just living the dream, my friend. Just trying to get this information out so everybody understands this. 1, C1. Every non-faulty node makes a decision in infinite time. 2, C2. All non-faulty nodes reach the same decision value. 3, C3. 0 and 1 are both possible values for all non-faulty nodes. This removes the trivial solution in which all nodes decide 0 or 1 regardless of the information they have been presented. Now we get into 2.3. I'm actually interested in subsection 3.2 to expand upon the unique node list. So remember the UNL when we get to 3.2. Existing consensus algorithms. There has been much research done on algorithms that achieve consensus in the face of Byzantine errors. This previous work has included extensions to cases where all participants in the network are not known ahead of time, where the messages are sent asynchronously. There is no bound on the amount of time an individual node will take to reach a decision, and where there is a delineation between the notion of strong and weak consensus. One pertinent result of previous work on consensus algorithms is that of Fisher, Lynch, and Patterson, 1985, which proves that in the asynchronous case, non-termination is always a possibility for consensus algorithm, even with just one faulty process. This introduces the necessity for time-based heuristics to ensure convergence, or at least repeated iterations of non-convergence. We shall describe these heuristics for the Ripple protocol in section 3. So section 3 is going to be lit. Zoom cell, welcome in, my friend. Welcome in. 27 people watching now. I'm shocked. Wow, there was only 17 people last time. I just noticed more comments, so I knew more people had to be watching. 27 people, 25 likes. I can't even thank you enough. Now I don't even remember where I was at. Oh, right here. The strength of a consensus algorithm is usually measured in terms of the fraction of faulty processes it can tolerate. It is probable that no solution to the Byzantine general's problem, which already assumes synchronicity, and known participants can tolerate more than n-1/3, or you see what I see, 3 Byzantine faults, or 33% of the network acting maliciously. 2, the solution does not, however, require verifiable authenticity of the messages delivered between nodes, digital signatures. If a guarantee on the unforgeability of messages is possible, algorithms exist with much higher fault tolerance in the synchronous case. Several algorithms with greater complexity have been proposed by Byzantine consensus. In the asynchronous case, FAB Paxos 5 will tolerate n-1/5 Byzantine failures in a network of n nodes amounting to a tolerance of up to 20% of nodes. In the network colluding maliciously, Atia, Doyev, and Gill 3 introduce a phase algorithm for the asynchronous case, which can tolerate n-1/4 failures, or up to 25% of the network. Lastly, Alkari, ETAL 2008 6 present BFT-CUP, which achieves Byzantine consensus in the asynchronous case, even with unknown participants, with the maximal bound of a tolerance of n-1/3 failures, but with additional restrictions on connectivity of the underlying network. Miss Vicky, welcome in, love. You're here too. I really appreciate that. This is some great information to find as well, or at least to understand. Stanley, welcome in. You're the man, deserve all the support, staying true. I really appreciate that. Terry, some argue the consensus protocol makes the blockchain a centralized operation. That is something that I've also stated in the past. That's why I always ask is, are we actually centralized or decentralized? That is absolutely fact, Terry, what you just said. And that's a big conjecture and speculation amongst the community for sure. And others. 2.4, formal consensus goals. Our goal in the work is to show that the consensus algorithm utilized by the Ripple protocol will achieve consensus at each ledger close. even if consensus is the trivial consensus of all transactions being rejected, and that trivial consensus will only be reached with a known possibility or probability, even in the face of Byzantine failure. Since each node in the network, and this is page 4 of 8 right now, since each node in the network, and pay attention to these parts, we're almost at 3-2. Remember 3-2 at the UNL? We're almost there. Almost there. Since each node in the network only votes on proposals from a trusted set of nodes, the other nodes in its UNL, and since each node made differing UNLs, we also show that only one consensus will be reached amongst all nodes, regardless of UNL membership. This goal is also referred to as preventing a fork in the network, a situation in which two disjoint set of nodes each reach consensus independently, and two different last closed ledgers are observed by nodes on each node set. Lastly, we'll show that Ripple protocol can achieve these goals in the face of N-1/5 failures, which is not the strongest result in the literature. But we will also show that the Ripple protocol possesses several other desirable features that greatly enhance its utility. So hey, you want to know the utility of Ripple protocol? Here we go. And this gets better and better as we get through. I told you the beginning was boring. Beginning was boring. But we'll get into it. David Robinson, the question is how the World Trade Center, the digital market for ISO 20022. I mean, it's a good question. I got to keep going into this. This is very long. Actually, anyone see this dropping as low as 38 cents? I appreciate it. We'll get into the charts after. Just remember, the only way to get down to 38 cents is if we lose the 4, 5, 7 pattern formation uptrend, and then ultimately lose the inverted head and shoulders at 44 cents. If we do that, get a rejection at 4, 5, 7 on the pattern uptrend, which is the formation, yes, you're coming down to 37 cents, no question. Or 38 cents, no question. But you need to lose the inverted head and shoulders neckline and confirm this pattern breakdown. No problem, X-Ray. See, I can do charts without seeing the charts. I remember it all. 3.1 definition, the RPCA. So what is this all about, everybody? The Ripple Protocol Consensus Algorithm. Now we get into the business. The Ripple Consensus Algorithm. The Ripple Protocol Consensus Algorithm, the RPCA, is applied every few seconds by all nodes in order to maintain the correctness and agreement of the network. Once consensus is reached, the current ledger is considered closed and becomes the last closed ledger. Assuming that the consensus algorithm is successful and that there is no fork in the network, the last closed ledger maintained by all nodes in the network will be identical. 3.1 definition, the RPCA proceeds in rounds in each round. So, first step, initially each server takes all valid transactions it has seen prior to the beginning of the consensus round that have not already been applied. These may include new transactions initiated by end users of the server, transactions held over from a previous consensus process, etc., and makes them public in the form of a list known as the candidate set. Ron's Aviation, it's at 47 now. Okay, so right now being at 47 cents, what you need to watch for to confirm the bear flag is first, the 471 level is the 4 hourly 20 days. So if we can get back above that, the 20-day resistance, let's just say we got on top of 471, you would still need to get over 48 cents, which is where the bearish cross happened in the daily time frame. So if you're using the exponential moving averages, the EMA, if you look at the chart, that would be the red line crossing the 50. So the 20 crossing the 50, the red crossing the orange. That has happened. So you'd have to get back above both those levels to invalidate this bear flag. So we're in some trouble right now. Each server then amalgamates the candidate sets of all servers on its UNL and votes on the veracity of all transactions. Transactions that receive more than a minimal percentage of yes votes are passed on to the next round. If there is one wild transaction that do not receive enough votes, will either be discarded or included in the candidate set for the beginning of the consensus protocol on the next ledger. The final round of consensus requires a minimum percentage of 80% of a server's UNL agreeing on a transaction. All transactions that meet this requirement are applied to the ledger, and that ledger is closed, becoming the new last closed ledger. 31 people watching. I can't even, I'd clap for you, but it's very hard to clap my hand. I can't thank you enough for tuning in. 32 likes. That's impressive. I must say I'm rather lucky that I get 100%, if not more, every time. We always get plus 100% of the viewers by the end, and that's incredible. I know that's not the norm, so I don't even know how to thank you properly, except by giving you the true information. 3.2, correctness. In order to achieve correctness, given a maximal amount of Byzantine failures, it must be shown that it is impossible for a fraudulent transaction to be confirmed during consensus unless the number of faulty nodes exceeds that tolerance. The proof of the correctness of the RPCA then follows directly, since a transaction is only approved of 80% of the UNL. If a server agrees with it, as long as 80% of the UNL is honest, no fraudulent transactions will be approved. Thus, for a UNL of N nodes and the network, the consensus protocol will maintain correctness so long as you read this. You read this. You read this right here. You read that. You read that little variable, and you make that for what it is. And this is expanding back from, remember, section 2.2. Should be way more so valuable info. People just want to hear 589 lies. Exactly. Bitcoin, yes. Okay, so Bitcoin. I seen the question from from Kalmar. Said Bitcoin 25K retest. Now, right now, remember, Bitcoin at the time of recording was right around, and I don't know where we're at now, 30,200. We're inside of a bull flag still, but remember, 30,000 is the CME, or the CME gap is 30,000 that we filled. That's on top of the channel. If we fall on side of the bull flag, right now, if we break up the technical targets, just about 35,040. On the breakdown, to confirm what Kalma's saying, that 25,000 retest, a breakdown on this bull flag structure and a loss of that channel we broke above, the technical target on a breakdown is 25,194, in my opinion. So he is not wrong, or she. My audience, Kalma, hold on. This is a he. But I don't know. That's just what's going on. Miss Vicky, yes, X-Ray, I pray for the people because they may miss out. They will miss out. They will miss out because they only want to hear the FUD. And with the numbers, that's the biggest crime we commit in the XRP community, the influencers, that is. They don't give out the real information. They just give out numbers that are meaningless. These are the real numbers. Where F is the number of Byzantine failures. In fact, even in the face of N-1, 5 plus 1 Byzantine failures, correctness is still technically maintained. The consensus process will fail, but it will still not possible. It will still not be possible to confirm a fraudulent transaction. Indeed, it would take 4N plus 1 slash 5, or what the fuck is that symbol? Why can't I understand? Why can't my brain function what this damn signal is right now? What is that? Next to the 5. Can somebody please say it so I stop sounding like an idiot? 4N plus 1. What the hell is that? A dash? No, a slash? What do we consider that nowadays? The Byzantine failures for an incorrect transaction to be confirmed. We call this second bound, the bound for weak correctness. And the former, the bound for strong correctness. We're positive here, so yes, let's pray to fight the elites together. Yes, sir, X-Ray. Terry, Ripple Labs blockchain technology is a home run, no-brainer for bank partnerships. The issue I have is the tweak made in 2021 to the ODL, which does not require the use of XRP. Yeah, do you know why that tweak happened? You still need XRP for more than just the ODL. I've gone into XRP a lot on why it's more important than just the ODL. But yes, for the on-demand liquidity, theoretically, they did that for in the USA. If they can't use XRP in the USA, they're going to do something else. Don't get it twisted, though. It's still going to be used worldwide in that exact fashion. It should also be noted that not all fraudulent transactions pose a threat, even if confirmed during consensus. And remember, I did a live where I talked about that exact thing and showed the exact documents about how they don't need to use XRP, so I'm very well-rounded in that actual literature. Should a user attempt to double spend funds in 2 transactions, for example, even if both transactions are confirmed during the consensus process, after the first transaction is applied, the second will fail. As the funds are no longer available, this robustness is due to the fact that transactions are applied deterministically, and that consensus ensures that all nodes in the network are applying the deterministic rules to the same set of transactions. For a slightly different analysis, let us assume that the probability that any node will decide to collude and join a nefarious cartel is PC, and the probability of the correctness is given by P, where you see that you see this, you guys can read this. That's exactly what it's talking about, the formula. This is the formula. This probability represents the likelihood that the size of the nefarious cartel will remain below the maximal, and here's page 5 of 8. Now we get into some figures. Brad Garlinghouse, more than 50% of transaction volume runs through XRP 2023. Thank you, Kalma. 100%. But you got to make little what do we like to call it? Little asterisks next to things so you can give yourself the leeway just in case it goes against you in the USA, and just in case any nefarious governments decide to not allow it. You've got to have a way out with XRP if you got to do something different in the USA. Kid you not, though, that's not going to make a damn difference on the price. Even if the US market is not part of this, not going to change anything. That's the misconception. Not going to change a damn thing. Threshold of Byzantine failures, given PC, since this likelihood is a binomial distribution values of PC greater than 20% will result in expected cartels of size greater than 20% of the network. Thwarting the consensus process, in practice, a UNL is not chosen randomly, but rather with the intent to minimize PC, since nodes are not anonymous, but rather cryptographically identifiable. Selecting a UNL of nodes from a mixture of continents, nations, industries, ideologies, etc., will produce values of PC much lower than 20%. As an example, the probability of the Anti-Defamation League and the West Baptist Church colluding to defraud the network is certainly much smaller than 20%. Even if the UNL has a relatively large PC, say 15%, the probability of the correctness is extremely high, even with only 200 nodes, in the UNL 97.8%. A graphical representation how the probability of incorrectness scales as a function of UNL size for differing values of PC is depicted in figure 1. Is this figure 1? What the hell's figure 1? Oh, maybe that's figure 1. Note that here the vertical axis represents the probability of a nefarious cartel thwarting consensus, and thus lower values indicate greater probability of consensus success, as can be seen in the figure. Even with PC as high as 10%, the probability of consensus being thwarted very quickly becomes negligible as the UNL grows past 100 nodes. Cruz, I'm giving you a like, Tom. Keep up the good work. Again, warning, did you buy H-Bar yesterday? Yes, we did. We did FOMO Fridays, the second weekly installment. We are now up to 6,900 H-Bar approximately. Just over. Yes, indeed, it would be great if the regulars did become members of Tom's Army, as I put out all this content for free. I don't do any paid advertisements, paid promotions, or paid sponsorships of any kind. That's strictly prohibited on this station and community. It's going good, Crypto Solo Scrooge. What's up, brother? Go check out Crypto Solo Scrooge on YouTube. He covers Sologenic very well. He had an update today, I noticed, mate. I noticed he had an update. Watched it, was fantastic. I won't get into it because I want everybody to watch it. A graphical representation of how the probability of, oh no, we already seen that. 3.3, agreement. To satisfy the agreement requirement, it must be shown that all non-faulty nodes reach a consensus on the same set of transactions, regardless of their UNLs. Since the UNLs for each server can be different, agreement is not inherently guaranteed by the correctness proof. For example, if there are no restrictions on the membership of the UNL, and the size of the UNL is not larger than 0.2, where n total is the number of nodes in the entire network, then a fork is possible. This is illustrated by a simple example depicted in figure 2. Imagine 2 clicks within the UNL graph, each larger than 0.2. Oh, this is figure 1. I was going to say, okay, so figure 1 is down here. So this is what we just read about, the nefarious characters, and figure 2 is actually what we're talking about right now, is right here. So let's get this right. Imagine 2 clicks within the UNL graph, each larger than 0.2 n total. By clicks, we mean a set of nodes where each node's UNL is same set of nodes. Because these 2 clicks do not share any members, it is possible for each to achieve a correct consensus independently of each other, violating agreement. If the connectivity of the 2 clicks surpasses 0.2 n total, then a fork is no longer possible, as disagreement between the clicks would prevent consensus from being reached at the 80% agreement threshold that is required. An upper bound on the connectivity required to prove agreement is given. So this is figure 2, an example of the connectivity required to prevent a fork between the UNL clicks. So this is what I was talking about and alluding to. No problem, Crypto Scrooge. You can drop your link to your channel in the comments too if you would like. That is absolutely not an issue. And I did this as well because everybody who talked about, if anybody remembers, everybody kept saying PayPal, PayPal, PayPal. So we shut down the PayPal by just putting the PayPal link up there, so we don't have to hear about it anymore. So if you don't want to donate through YouTube, yes, I understand not everybody does. There's your way around it. Prove agreement is given by UNL. You guys can read the equation. This upper bound assumes a click-like structure of UNLs, i.e. nodes from sets whose UNLs contain other nodes in those sets. This upper bound guarantees that no 2 clicks can reach consensus on conflicting transactions, since it becomes impossible to reach the 80% threshold required for consensus. A tighter bound is possible when indirect edges between UNLs are taken into account as well. For example, if the structure of the network is not click-like, a fork becomes much more difficult to achieve due to the greater entanglement of the UNLs of all nodes. Man, this is becoming fascinating. Anybody who's been watching this since the beginning, we are getting a lot of information out of this. Is it interesting to the note that no assumptions are made about the nature of the intersecting nodes? The intersection of 2 UNLs may include faulty nodes, but so long as the size of the intersection is larger than the bound required to guarantee agreement, and the total number of faulty nodes is less than the bound required to satisfy strong correctness, then both correctness and agreement will be achieved. That is to say, agreement is, well, do the nodes receive XRP for their consensus? Let's continue reading through, and I'm sure your question will be answered as we go through. I don't want to speak. I want to read exactly what it says in here. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's just go back a little bit. So long as the size of the intersection. Yes, Crypto Scrooge, you got the 2-year badge. That's for being a member of Tom's Army for 2 years. You know, everybody talks about the 589. As I speculated in 2023, doesn't that mean we're likely only going to get up to 58.9 cents? So I kind of turned it into the 2-year badge. It's the moon with 589 and yada, yada, yada. I'm glad you noticed, my friend, and thank you so much for being a part of this for 24 months in Tom's Army. That's incredible. That is to say, I really appreciate that, Crypto Scrooge. I really do. That is to say, agreement is dependent solely on the size of the intersection of nodes, not on the size of intersection of the non-faulty nodes. 3.4 utility. While many components of utility are subjective, one that is indeed probable is convergence. That consensus process will terminate in infinite time. So now we're on page 6 of 8. So as you can see, not as much information on page 6, and page 7 is basically the last page of real knowledge. So we're getting there, everybody. Settlement the prior to Fed now on the 20th. I mean, honestly, to me, I've always stood by the end of Q3 or sometime in September. I think sometime in September, you're either going to get a settlement or we're going to realize we're going to trial by jury. So, no, I don't believe a settlement's coming on the 20th, but I'm sure, is that the next date that's been given by all of YouTube? I don't know. Probability of consensus thwarting cartel, and this is what we talked about for figure 1. Probability of a nefarious cartel being able to thwart consensus as a function of the size of the UNL. For different values of PC, All I can think of PC is in South Park, the PC guy. The probability that any member of the UNL will decide to collude with others. Here, lower values indicate a higher probability of consensus success. So there's the breakdown. What did you miss, Mark? You're gonna have to go back to the very beginning. This is an 8-page breakdown of the Ripple protocol consensus algorithm. And right now we just started page 6, believe it or not. How many minutes are we in? 40 minutes already. Wow. I did not expect 37 people to be here the entire time I did this. So to have 44 likes is incredible. You guys are incredibly generous because this is very boring information to some, but to others who are nerds like me or are nerd-like, it's fascinating because I like to know all avenues. I look like shit today. I'm healing, but you know, it is what it is. I'm here. Right? We're here. Yeah, Miss Vicky, love. I don't think so either. So I think September is a much more likely either resolution and a settlement, and or, like I said in 2021, that would be the most likely area where they'd finally say we need to go to trial by jury. How did I know? I don't know. I seen that date and it was given to me. So what do I? You know, that's a part of faith. Understanding what's being presented in front of you and getting all the information and coming to a logical conclusion with no emotion. So I had to tune out the world and come to that conclusion, and now everybody's starting to agree with that date. So 3.4.1, convergence. We define convergence as a point in which the RPCA, remember, Ripple Protocol Consensus Algorithm, reaches consensus with strong correctness on the ledger. And that ledger then becomes the last closed ledger. Note that while technically weak correctness still represents convergence of the algorithm, it is only convergence in the trivial case as proposition C3 is violated and no transaction will ever be confirmed. My body is feeling a little bit better. My hand, the swelling's gone down by 75%. Still sore in the elbow a little bit, the forearm, you know, where I had to do the extension, and the wrist a little bit, but overall feeling good. My orbital bone right there is a little swollen in that orbital area, but I'm very lucky I didn't break that part of my face. My eye swollen a little bit, you know, but other than that, I'm very fucking lucky. I have a hook in my left thumb from when I completely tore apart my ulnar collateral ligament in my left thumb. So the fact I didn't do any damage to that area is another blessing. I'm telling you, I'm very blessed. Very blessed. Had a lot of stuff happen to me that should have been a lot worse. And you know, most of it, I could say wasn't my fault because I wasn't the one at fault. But certainly you could be paying a different attention or doing things slightly differently. So, you know, everything's a lesson. Sean, I just don't know how FedNow can possibly settle payments within seconds without the... Look at the Swift GPI, my friend. The Swift GPI will answer that question for you. I did this in a live long ago. Maybe we'll revisit it, but look no further than the Swift GPI, my friend. Darren, a member for 19 months. Hey, Tom, bit late again. Gonna head back to the start to catch all the video. Hope you well. Mate, I appreciate that, mate. 19 months. That I cannot thank you enough. Cannot thank you enough for being a part of this and re-upping for 19 months. Wow, TC, you had get a metal plate over your orbital bone. Wow. That's incredibly painful. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Every blessing is a lesson. Exactly. It sure is. Sean, thanks for answering questions. Sub. Hey, no problem, Sean. That's why I'm here. And the cool thing about being here, as you'll see, Sean, is I don't do paid advertising or paid promotions or paid sponsorships. I get offered them all the time, but it defeats the purpose of what I do. And Tom's Army is not for additional information. That's just the people who want to show support for all the information I do. And, yeah, a lot of people told me that that I would stop this line of thinking once I became more popular. Well, we're about to knock down the door of 17,000 subscribers. If I was going to do it, I would have done it. A lot of money out there to be made, a lot more knowledge to be given, and a lot more people that'll pay it forward in the end. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that, and there's so many that pay it forward already, it proves my point. If I have the knowledge, why would I keep it to myself and try to charge you and hide it behind a paywall? Can't do it, won't do it, refuse to do it. C3 is violated, so from the results above, we know that strong correctness is always achievable in the face up to -1 5 Byzantine failures. I'll read the comments in just a second. I seen a few more came in. and that only one consensus will be achieved in the entire network network so long as the UNL connectedness condition is met. Equation 3, all that remains is to show that when both of these conditions are met, consensus is reached in infinite time. Infinite time. So not infinite, but infinite time. That's two separate things. John said, put ginger poultice on your joints. It will heat up and make you better. Use some cheesecloth for the grated ginger. Ooh, John, thank you for that holistic approach, as I don't take any pain pills. So that really does help. I'll smoke the cannabis. I've been putting Rick Simpson or the RSO oil on it. I'm sure most of you know it by that name. RSO oil over it as well. I've been doing a lot of things more on the holistic side, but it's definitely done a great job. But the ginger, I will definitely look into that. I have ginger as well, so I buy the cloves. So this could, I need ginger poultice. So I need to grind it up, grate it. Fantastic. Sure thing, it really works too. And then save it in a jar and use it again later. That is unbelievable. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I'll let you know how that works. I know I can grate some of that up because Julie's got what I need. Since the consensus algorithm itself is deterministic and has a preset number of rounds, and Sean, I appreciate that. Respect is both ways. It's earned, and you've earned it too by asking. You ask questions and you never know. Preset number of rounds before consensus is terminated and the current set of transactions are declared approved or not approved, even if at this point no transactions have more than 80% required agreement, and the consensus is only the trivial consensus. The limiting factor for the termination of the algorithm is the communication latency between nodes. In order to bound this quantity, the response time of nodes is monitored, and the nodes whose latency grow larger than a preset bound B are removed from all UNLs, while this guarantees that consensus will terminate with an upper bound of TB, not to be misinterpreted with I don't even want to say names because they might ban us on YouTube. Who knows what they'll let us say. It is important to note that the bounds described for correctness and agreement above must be met by the final UNL after all nodes that will be, and this is page 7 of 8, folks, so we're getting there. The fact 34 people are here, 48 likes, that means a lot to me. Dropped have been dropped. If the condition hold for the initial UNL for all nodes, but then some nodes are dropped from the network due to latency, the correctness and agreement guarantees do not automatically hold, but must be satisfied by the new set of UNLs. Fasting speeds up the healing process, so you should be good soon since you doing. Yep, I actually maintain my intermittent fasting. I know I can't lift weights right now. Obviously, it's going to be a few weeks, if not longer. But I have hit. Day 42 was on Wednesday, so 43. Today's 45 of my intermittent fasting, where I eat between 1 and 9 p.m. So I'm equating to that as having some of this as well. It's got to be helping my healing, because there's no reason I should be as far along as I am after 72 hours. You should just see the difference, especially with the swelling. So 3.4.2 heuristics and procedures. As we learned about this in 3.4.1, as mentioned above, a latency-bound heuristic is enforced, and look, we can say it now, on all nodes in the Ripple network is guaranteed to guarantee